I call Materia Toure.
The Party is opposing this legislation, and I'll describe why in some detail shortly. We do understand, and we did consider seriously supporting it because it does provide a criteria on which the Remuneration Authority can consider MPs' pay. And on that basis, it is generally a move in the right direction. It is a publicly available measure that's being used, and it could help with transparency with MPs' pay, except of course that the principle is not just that there is a criteria. I mean, the Rem Authority already has the ability to use criteria to set MPs' pay, but that it is a criteria which constrains MPs' pay increases. And there is no evidence on the table, and I heard nothing in the Minister's speech, and he may have more evidence to provide us all, to show that this measure will constrain MPs' pay more than the current provisions provide. That was our criticism of the previous bill last week, is that it didn't constrain MPs' pay increases, and we want to see some evidence that this one will. It's not hard to argue with, it's not a huge issue. If there is evidence, we need to be able to see it, but there is none. And it's very difficult to even do the assessment. We did try to get the Parliamentary Library this morning, with the short time we've had to look at the bill, to see whether or not they could calculate it, and it's very difficult. And yet we've been asked to support this legislation with no evidence at all that it will actually do the job it's supposed to do. And so we're not prepared to whitewash this issue. In fact, we need to make sure that we have proper criteria that restrains MPs' pay, and the Green Party has put two proposals forward. They will arrive as SOPs shortly for the House. One where the criteria is based on nominal increases in the median wage, which would significantly constrain MPs' pay increases. That means that if the median wage goes up by $100, then the MPs' pay goes up by $100. It's not percentage based. And the second is based on the labour cost index, which is a much better measure than the QES, and would also significantly constrain MPs' pay increases, because that is the principle. Not just that there is a criteria. There is already criteria that the Rem Authority use. So this bill doesn't provide any meaningful change to what the current situation is. So why then would we give it a tick when it doesn't actually do anything? So I'm really concerned by what I've heard today so far, we're only halfway through the first reading, of the attitude of MPs to the public. Now, there's been talk about the odium that we will receive as a result of MPs' pay increases. We do not treat the public fairly in the discussion about MPs' pay and allowances. We do not make sure that there is an open and transparent system for them to assess the validity of any allowances that we have, or the pay increases that we might get, or how that pay is set. The Rem Authority has been trying to do that a bit better. But to say that MPs get treated with odium and disrespect, and I think, hatred and disgust is what that odium means, is grossly unfair to the public. The public will be pissed off if they think that there is unfairness in our system. And it is up to us then to demonstrate that the system is fair. And the best way we can do that is not to rush legislation through in urgency because there is a public backlash. It is to have a proper, open and transparent system. And the Green Party has been arguing now for years and years, started with Rod Donald, years and years, that we should have an independent and full review of MPs' pay and allowances, ex-MPs' entitlements, and have that fully available for scrutiny to the public, so we can have a proper discussion about what it is we need to do our job, the kind of job that we have, making sure we have the tools to do our job and nothing more. We get paid for the job we do, we have the resources we need to do the job, and the public, when we have been open and transparent, have been really responsive. The Green Party led the transparency move for our accommodation and travel allowances, if you remember. We opened up our books, and as a result, the Speaker then put in the system so that everybody's travel and accommodation allowances are now known to the public. And there were howls of outrage from MPs because they thought that the public would crash in on us from the gallery and have huge problems with what we were spending. In fact, the fact of the transparency gave the public confidence about what we were doing and how we were doing it. And it now largely goes unnoticed. Now, we do not need to treat the public with such disrespect, and neither should we treat this process with such disrespect. So the bill has two parts that I'm mostly interested in. The first, of course, is the criteria, which simply doesn't work to do the job, or at least we've got no evidence that it will. And the second is that the bill will revoke the Remuneration Authority's determination of the pay increase. That is what we need to do. Revoke that now, and we could do that by urgency. It's in the bill, and then we can have a proper process with a select committee and some time to consider what is the best criteria for the Rem Authority to use to constrain MPs' pay. That would do both jobs. We would stop the pay increase now. We could do that this afternoon. And then we would also give ourselves the time to look at what is good criteria for the Rem Authority to use, to open it up for public scrutiny so that the public can have a say on what they think the most appropriate criteria should be to use. Make sure we've got it right, because I absolutely agree with Chris Hipkins and others who have spoken that the chances of us having to come back and fix this are very, very high. It's only been a week and a half or something since the first version of the bill came to the Parliament. And then we would know we were doing the right thing for the right reasons and doing a good job. That's what we get paid for. That's what this is all about. If we are going to make law, we need to be professional lawmakers and make sure we do a good job and we don't waste time, and we do deserve the pay that we will eventually get. But in fact, what National and others are showing to the public is that we will only be responsive on these issues when we feel we're under political attack. We won't take them seriously as they ought to be. We will not trust the public to have a say about what our pay and allowances should be. And we will be defensive and hurried about it. I think it's very shameful, actually, what is going on today. It is why we have opposed urgency. It is why we are opposing this bill. It's why we're going to great efforts to find alternatives to put forward to the Parliament so that parliamentarians can consider different criteria and think about what is the best way to proceed. It's why we're going to see if we can put an SOP that will just revoke the Rem Authority's decision, and just that, so that we can take time. So we will no doubt have some long discussions over the next 24 hours or so about the effects of this bill and the concerns that MPs have about it, and I will reiterate again that I am very much looking forward to the Minister providing the evidence that shows that this constrains MPs' pay. It may be that the Minister does not intend to constrain MPs' pay increases, but just to set the criteria. If that's the case, I think he needs to tell us that. It needs to be very clear that this is not designed to reduce pay increases. It is only designed to put a criteria in place. Now, I don't agree with that, but at least it would be more upfront about what we're trying to do, and we're being more upfront with the public about the results of this bill. Because I think that is where, in this whole process, the Parliament is really falling down today. This chamber is falling down today, treating the public with such high levels of disrespect. They deserve better from us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.